Okay, so I'm going to start class 2.2 as we've moved into the second module on strategic planning. Tonight, I'm going to cover more stuff that I think will be helpful for your project and move on into this phase. I wanted to close the book on module one. So got exam one finished. Average was 87. I thought that was about normal. A couple of points higher than last year. Average time a little over an hour. So that's kind of checks out too. And I didn't see anything that was too confusing that I personally thought should have been confusing.
What seemed to be the performance on that systems diagram chart? Did everyone seem to get it right?
So right is it wasn't a binary thing, right? So
I guess the people seem to understand the material.
yeah, so here's how I graded that, and I think I shared a sample solution with each person that I attached in the comments section. But what I was looking for was your ability to read a situation where a lot was going on, or a good bit was going on, and be able to apply the systems thinking and the systems diagram language and the things that we talked about to it. So what I was looking for, could you identify feedback loops, whether they be reinforcing or balanced? Could you identify if those were interacting with each other to form some kind of systems architecture? Could you identify if there were any delays in the system? And so could you also identify beyond archetypes if there was more than that going on, or archetypes interacting with other archetypes? Like did I expect you to get all of that? No. What I was looking for was the degree to which you could assess a system in a situation. So I looked at two things: the description and the verbiage that you used that helped me understand a little bit. If you understood the actual fifth discipline systems thinking language, if you were using the right terms, this is this type of loop, and this type of archetype, and explain that this is how that is applying to the situation, then like that was big. Then I also looked at because I had some people who did a great job of explaining it, and the diagram wasn't there. And some people did really good diagrams, but I couldn't tell, like, there was a lot of explanation. So if you used the right words and you had so I would say it was maybe 25, 50%, 25 as far as low end, middle end, high end. So what I was looking for, if you did one loop, you saw one loop and were able to say, hey, this is a reinforcing loop or whatever, and you used the right terms, okay. You know, can't remember five, maybe out of the 10. If you identified that there were two loops interacting, and there wasn't just one right answer. I was looking more for how much of the complexity you could pull out of that because there was a few directions. So there's the data availability, the desired implementation of Internet of Things devices, right? And that creates data. That's a reinforcing loop. That's one way of looking at it. Then there's a balancing loop of, the more data that I make available, bam, that's pretty vulnerable. And then after a while, once people figure out this data, there's cyber attacks, and that can start to slow down the desire to have data availability. So that's that reinforcing loop. Check with a balancing loop, which we call limits to prove archetype. So if you could see two of those and describe that pretty well, then it's around a 7 or 8, I think. I can't remember. But then there's a third thing going on too. There's a third loop, potentially, and this is just one advantage of it, that can kind of create that shifting the burden symptomatic fundamental solution of, okay, given that the cyber threats are there, is there a third loop that I can put in that we can implement strategically some of these cybersecurity measures and invest in that would respond quicker and mitigate to the cyber threats, which would keep the regions going side. So if you could see all three of those things, then that's the full credit level that I was looking for and be able to articulate it. So it kind of for the first time, and anything that I grade looked more like a normal curve in terms of low end, most in the middle, high end. Which is not what I was expecting. Was I expecting everybody to get all of that? No. What I was really gauging beyond the technical correctness of the loops, because there are multiple ways you could express it, was what level of complexity can you pull out of this situation? Can you see the variables at play that are interacting? That's what I was. So, and I was, for the most part, it was on point. I was appreciated it. I will, project phase one, added a couple of days to that, so it'll be due tomorrow, I think. Project phase two is already available. If you want to do a sneak peek, look at that, because project phase one was originally due yesterday, I think. I added a couple of days because I try to be a nice kid. I'm about done with that. In pro wrestling, we call it a heel turn. I think from a good guy to a bad guy. I'm going to hit somebody with a steel chair. Come back with a mask and pretend I'm not me. And so phase two is available and underway, and it'll be due in about a month. About a month to do that. And there's a lot of heavy lifting in that phase two. So stay tuned if you're watching this video on recording. I'm not going to talk about it at the beginning of class because I want to have a good class. Stay tuned toward the end because I'm going to talk about the project a little bit. And it's things that you probably want to hear. I say that, I'm going to probably say things to people who are here and don't need to hear it, and the people who don't watch the video probably won't watch it to know to go listen to it. But that's them. They don't have to pass or be in grad school for all. Okay, I said I wanted to start off on a good note, didn't I? No, I love you guys. And for those of you that are not listening, I love you too. You're probably not going to do well in this class because you're doing silly things. And we can discuss them if you'd like to contact. So we're going to get on into module 2. We kicked off module 2 last week with the strategic planning process, and we looked at the soft side of things. How do we develop vision? How do we develop our mission statement, determine our organizational values? And True North, we kind of looked at that last week. And then this week, we're going to look at, now that we're developing our strategic plan, one of the most important things I think is being able to do a competitive analysis. And then we're also going to look at that competitive analysis and turn that into how we can pull that into the yellow card and fill out the right side of the yellow card, which will help us in our innovation process to convince ourselves that our ideas to expand our business are either good ones or they're not, which is part of our process. So we'll circle back around at the end after I cover some of those competitive analysis tools and discuss that. So last week we looked at vision, mission, and value. So this is just a quick review where we talked about as an organization, the vision is that 3 to 5 year horizon. What do I see in the future? What is the ideal? What would I like based within the confines of my organization to be? And when you win, Russ Laraway calls it, he says it's what hill are we trying to climb? And then mission is more tactical. It's focused on the present, where the vision is here's what we want to be in the future. The mission is here's what we do today as an organization. And I said a good mission statement discusses the purpose of the organization. Here's why we exist. The intended impact. Here's what we hope comes out of what we do. And the customers. Who do we do this for? And if those 3 things are clearly stated, then that's good. And then we talk about organizational values. What are those things that define us as an organization that we go back and look at and drive our decision making and ultimately our behaviors? And so in the Doing the Right Thing book. They introduce the strategic planning, the motion process, the 6-step process, and we kind of covered step 1 last week. And we'll look starting with step 2 today. Before I forget and go any further, I meant to say this a couple of slides back. So the next 2 weeks, there is a really good chance we won't have live classes. Next week is engineering week here on campus, so there's various things that are good for faculty to be involved in that I'll probably be involved in on Thursday evening and not be able to be here. And then the next week I'll be traveling as of right now for some research projects and be out of town. So we'll probably have recorded sessions or sessions that won't have live class sessions. So what I'll probably do, since those 2 will bring us to the end of module 2, and you will have not seen me before the exam for module 2, I will probably push that back a week so that when I do come back, I can at least answer any questions as we're starting module 3 at that point after spring break. Just to give you a heads up of where my mind is, I'll do some kind of official announcement on Canvas once I figure out the details, but I did want to mention that. I don't like missing class, I really don't, but like it seems like this semester more than anything, but from my graduate classes, there seems to be things coming up outside of control, and so fortunately in this day and age, with online learning, there's ways to address that. So with strategy, I talked about this last week. There's a big difference. What is strategy? There's a big difference in operational effectiveness, which is being really good at what we do, and strategy, which is making sure we're doing the right thing. Because I can be really, really, really good, operationally effective. I think last week what I used the example of is producing CDs, compact disc. I could be amazing at it. I could have a process that's down to running like a well-oiled machine and cranking them out and be very operationally effective. And then I look up and say, man, nobody wants these anymore. These are not the way people are consuming media anymore. There's no demand for it. I became really good at something. I'm running a race that nobody cares about anymore. Whereas strategy, like we talked about last week, is at some point at that growth curve, when we talked about with innovation, the products and the services that we have out there reach a maturity level where the market's got comparable competition, the demand is saturated, we're able to charge less for what we want, or there's new ways of doing what we've traditionally offered. And if we don't reinvent ourselves at that maturity phase of our technology, then we will end up stuck in this left side, making CDs really, really well, and nobody wanting them. And that's not a good business model or a sustainable business model. So that's where the role of innovation comes, and in strategy. So I shared one of the classical references and authorities on strategy is a guy named Michael Porter. And Michael Porter, out of Harvard, has some publications which I shared with you for you to read. One of them is What is Strategy? And where he was kind of on the front end of talking about the strategic planning process and pushing organizations to think of the big picture. And one of the things he talked about is different types of generic strategies that organizations could adopt, with one of them being differentiation. So differentiation is, how are we different from anyone else that's out there? What is our niche that maybe we can offer, our slant on things that makes us unique and different from other people who are offering similar things? And another strategy is a cost leadership strategy, which means I may not be very unique, but I can offer it at a more affordable cost and get market share that way. Walmart. forever. What is their slogan, their popular slogan?
Save money, live better.
Save money, live better. Got the smiley face, right? They always talk about rolling back prices, surprise rollback. So not a lot unique, different. We're able to do it from that perspective. Or the third thing, and it's not really a different thing, but it is I could be either differentiation or cost leadership for a very, very focused segment. So like my research center, we offer training and project implementation on lean and strategic planning for organizations. But then I have contracts where I've specialized and say we only offer this for small and medium-sized manufacturing companies. Same services, but for some of the contracts we offer for very focused segmentation, or it could be even more segmented and say, hey, my company specialized, we do this for just automotive. And so all of those come with their own pluses and negatives. We could focus on just a certain age group or something. And as we will get into later in class, what we'll see is that audience that we're looking to sell our idea, our product to, will come into play when we start running the math numbers to see how viable our idea might be potentially.
On that slide, he had I can't remember the exact comment, but it was essentially you don't want to be in the center. You either want to be differentiated or cost leadership or focused, but you don't want to be part of each because then you're in no man's land.
Yeah, because then you have a strategy, right? Like I think that's the thing. If you're trying to do everything, and I 100% agree. If you're going to go cost leadership, you got to go all in because like that's a hard one to even to adopt anyway. Like if you're going to be Walmart, like you don't worry about having something special and cute and different either. Just say this is our thing. And yeah, so I do agree on that. And that's part of strategy is finding what is your focus and your niche. And if you think back a couple of weeks ago in the first module, right, we talked about the good to great framework and they called it the hedgehog concept. What is your hedgehog concept? What is that one thing that you're really good at that no matter how many sly plans the fox comes up with, the hedgehog just coils up and does one thing and does one thing well, protect itself and foils the fox every day. And so if you can have that thing that you do really well, like that's a good thing to center strategy. So here's just some examples of, because that's what you can become competitive on, right? Like that's what competitiveness is if I have this aspect, I can effectively differentiate myself. So here's just some examples. Like I talked about Walmart, Dollar General is even more of a low cost provider with, and a lot of that comes with not having brand names. Quality, when you think of quality, there's brands that look at that, whether it be Porsche, Costa, sunglasses, higher quality materials, higher tolerances, higher level of engineering, higher price, hopefully longer lasting. Innovation. That's one of the big things we've been talking about. Apple, really big on that. Whether it be, they're really good at coming out with new technologies that make you want the next devices or changing the charger plugs or you have to get the next devices or your battery's slowing down or whatever it is. But the fact is there is something new in all the future models that like there's innovation that keeps you chasing. I remember a MacBook to me, like mine, the only reason to get a new one is when there's new features and technologies that didn't exist when you had the previous one. Like they don't break, they're like Toyotas. It's like you don't even have to reboot them or they, or at least mine for a long time. But then like I had same thing with a Toyota. I had one for 16 years. Tacoma. Loved that truck. Then somebody ran into me, wrecked it, T-boned it. Liked the Tacoma, get a new Tacoma. 16 years later, there was like a whole 3 new waves of technology I didn't know I needed because they like it existed in this new truck. And I was like, oh, I didn't even know I needed all this stuff. And so now I'm like, I'm going to keep this thing for 16 years. I love this truck, but like, I don't want to miss it for 16 years of technology. And MacBooks are kind of the same way. It's like, oh yeah, they run great, but like, then I need something new. That they came out with. Response time. Amazon Prime, their subscription service, get this delivered today, tomorrow. Service, some organizations are service oriented. Chick-fil-A, really good at that. It's so dang nice. They keep you coming back. Nordstrom, notorious in the retail business. They made their name in the Northwest with being service oriented. There's stories of people returning new sets of tires and getting a refund at Nordstrom and getting the refund. And Nordstrom doesn't sell tires. They were just very overly service oriented on that. So there's different ways of finding niches. And that's how you can start to identify how can we be competitive in things. And then another view on it, we talked about the Blue Ocean strategy back a few weeks ago. And the Blue Ocean strategy calls it value innovation. In other words, Blue Ocean means I want to have a business idea that is different than what anyone else is doing. I don't want to be over here in this red ocean. The red ocean is there's a bunch of sharks, there's a bunch of competition, and it's really bloody and it's hard to compete. But if I can come up with my own unique idea, then that's a blue ocean that I can compete and charge a higher margin. And so they talk about one way to view that is through their term for it is value innovation. So in other words, it's taking and looking at one thing that's offered in an industry and saying, here's what it costs now. Are there things I can get rid of to make that cost less? But then also combine it with things that add value to it that haven't traditionally been there. And so the example that they always like to use is, and I never get the pronunciation right, Cirque du Soleil, the combination of the circus and the Broadway show. Yeah. Cirque du Soleil, whatever it is. I'm Southern, I can't say anything. But what they did is they looked at the circus and they said, what about the circus is expensive? Those freaking lions and somebody to tame it. It's got a lot of liability with it. The animals, like there's a lot of that. If we take that out, just focus on some of the other stuff. But then what? Wait, there's this showmanship that we can bring from Broadway and add to it and combine it and have something that's totally different. That's where the idea came from. So that's kind of the blue ocean view of being competitive. The Boston Consultant Group, been around for a long time. They have a competitor matrix analysis that they use, and this has been around forever. But this is a way to assess the products or services that you currently offer in terms of market share and industry growth. And then actions or strategies that you could take depending on where it's at. So if we have something that has low growth rate, CPs, nobody's going to want it. There's not a potential for that to grow. And we have a low market share for whatever reason in that. Or we have a high market share in that. Then, okay, we're the best at making CDs. There's not much growth opportunity. That's called a cash cow because we better get as much out of it right now as we can. While somebody's forward. But then also start to look at divesting out of that and say, what is our next step going to be? Let's do product development and innovation. How do we diversify? Because we can't just keep counting on this. If it's something with a low sales growth and we don't have a lot of market share in it, this is highly offensive to me, but the BCG group called that dogs, which I think the highest level of what they offer should be called dogs, but they call something that you're not you don't have a lot of market share and it doesn't have a lot of potential, those are things we probably shouldn't invest a lot in. If it has a lot of potential, but we don't have a lot of market share, then that's high risk, right? And they name that wild carding, or I heard it, when I learned it, it was wildcatting after the way they would drill for oil in Texas back in the oil boom days. It's like, you never knew when you were gonna strike, so you just start drilling in a lot of places, hoping that 1 in 1,000 might hit. And so wildcatting is, it's got a high risk, but when it hits, man, that could be a big thing. And so that's where you look into market development, market research, things like that. Trying to gain market share, given that it does have high potential. And then the sweet spot is, what do we offer that we do have a high market share? We have a name, we have a position in the market, and it has high potential. I mean, that's great, right? That's ideal, but that allows you to look at your current ideas and things that you're offering to clients, and also ideas that you're evaluating, kind of like what you are doing and what we'll be doing in phase 2 of your project, and say, where would these fall and how does that affect the viability of it going forward? Because at some point you got to go from really cool idea to a really cool idea that's meaningful and unique, that somebody's willing to pay for it to be true innovation. And by the way, same thing for a dissertation topic. That's the hard part. You got to go from, oh, really cool idea, I'm going to save the world, to this is a really cool idea that's meaningful and unique, and somebody will publish it because it contributes to something. So those are the same. I find this to be helpful in analyzing strategy and competitiveness as well. And that's looking at products and services that you offer, or attributes or features of those products and services, and evaluating them on the Kano model, which looks at level of customer satisfaction that can come from the realization of certain attributes. So quadrant 1 is if a feature or an attribute or an idea is a wow factor or an excitement. So what that tells me is those are things that only will satisfy a customer because they're not expecting it and may not have even know they need it. Ever discovered features like that in your vehicle, or your phone, or something? It's like, oh, I didn't even know that exists. Wow, nice. I remember searching for a TV when I moved to Huntsville many years ago. Not a TV, I was searching for a refrigerator, and I saw one in the appliance store that had a TV in it, and that made me stop and go, oh, I had no idea I needed that. Wow. Now it's on my mind. I did not get it, because I don't watch TV. I sure don't want to watch it in the kitchen. But that's an excitement factor. You can only satisfy customers when it only will satisfy customers because they didn't even know they wanted it to begin with. It's a wow. Now that's a way to set your bar. A performance factor is, it's great. Customers know they want it. It might be something they prefer. They're seeking it, but if it doesn't happen, they might be dissatisfied. But it may not be a deal breaker. So for me right now, Wi-Fi on flights. It's like, it's not always available on all flights. Sometimes it's more in some than others. So like, it's great when it's there. Don't fully expect it all the time. They kind of get irked a little bit when it's not there. Then the zone of indifference is kind of that maturity phase when something's out there, it's expected, and it really doesn't like give you anything.
Power company. Funny power company.
Yeah. Then threshold is you better have it. It's minimum requirement. That's what threshold is like. you can only dissatisfy people when it doesn't
Yeah,
exist.
help me too, okay.
It's both, yeah. Now, I mean, we take it for granted. Then it's also like, we're gonna be really pissed if it's not there. The threshold is, now it's become the bare minimum that you offer to be in the market. And what happens over time, right, is excitement features become threshold features. So what once set us apart, all eventually will become when everybody, it'll become the same. Everybody 20 years ago were walking around with BlackBerry phones with keyboards on it and typing, and touchscreen phones were crazy. And then the iPhone came out in 2007, and everybody there was like, that's a weird looking thing. Now it's crazy to see a phone that doesn't. So, the key there is assessing your current features and attributes. Where do they stack up? But then also realizing those are not always going to be wow factors. Then they become expected. What are some other things that you can start to do beyond that? This is another effective tool. This is another thing from Michael Porter, value chain analysis, which basically says this is a way and a visual diagram of thinking about everything that has to happen to bring your product or service into being. All aspects. So I have a customer. I have to have a way. If I'm making something, I have to have an inbound logistics consideration of how I'm going to get things in. What materials go into making this? How am I going to source those? Then operations says I have to have processes to be able to make it. Then outbound logistics is once I make this, can I get it to people that actually want it? How do I ship it? How do I send that out? Then I can make something really well. I can have a really great system to get things in, make it, send things out. But what if nobody knows about it? We have to have a marketing and a sales function to let people know we exist. Give it a catchy name. Come up with a logo. Make us look legit. Then when it gets to the customer, something that can really make us stand out is if there's this aftermarket service that we have. It builds customer loyalty a lot of times. But like that's the way the product or service flows to the customer. But then we also have to consider all the support functions. We have to have functions that are in place to buy things. We have to have IT that supports our system. We have to have a way to hire people and fire people and retire people. And manage human resources. We have to have buildings. We have to have investments. We have to have all of these support activities and understand that all those have to exist and that you need when you're thinking of an idea. So like in your project, you're thinking of product ideas or service ideas, you have to think about strategically, are there ways to do all these things? And could there be vulnerabilities in that? And consider it. And then, can we cover all that and also have some kind of price margin that we're able to compete? So it's just a holistic way of looking at things. And here's another way. I've seen this both ways, a SIPOC analysis or CROPUS analysis. So that stands for SIPOC is suppliers, inputs, processes, outputs, customers. So it's kind of the same, very similar as the value chain, which is suppliers, inputs, processes, outputs. The CROPUS is just SIPOC backwards, starting with the customer. That's the whole thing. Yeah, it's really considering things in the same categories. Somebody just got cute and said, yeah, but we should put the customer.
Right, different paper.
Exactly. Now you're getting it.
And,
Now you're becoming a PhD. I'm gonna turn the acronym around and write a paper. It's gonna be a novel idea, but they did throw this R in there.
We used to use CPOC a lot,
Mhm.
but what was effective was you'd give. We'd write the CPOC diagrams for all the different tasks, they would all join, so the customer of one would get supplier of the other. And then the teams who were doing the work would have to do the process flow diagrams, so that would kind of get them involved. It was pretty effective, then get them into, updated or whatever, it's a pretty useful tool.
I agree, and I've actually done, that too for internal processes too, and it's really interesting because what you discover is, because ideally, all the outputs in one group should be inputs for someone else, and then what happens is when they're not, you get to question why you're doing it and start simplifying processes a little bit.
Really, you've got, that becomes internal customers, external customers, that, I guess that's what you've got to show in this, there's different. Yeah, differentiate them, it's kind of just as important.
Exactly, and it just makes you think about everything that has to go into all of this. Especially in engineering management, like it's so easy for, like, there's engineering disciplines embedded in each of these. There's supply chain, there's industrial engineers in this, there's supply chain here and the product development, which I'm looking to even see where it's at. You've got your mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, but like it's easy for us to get isolated in our own piece and not see how it affects the whole big picture. The one thing, the R that the Cropus slipped in that SciPot didn't have, SciPork, I guess it would be if they slipped the R in, is requirements. So like starting with the customer and saying what are their requirements, and then what outputs do we need to meet their requirements. An output is the end product or the end service that people are actually paying for. And then what processes do we do to create those outputs? What inputs would we need to do to put into our processes? What people, equipment, materials, methods do we need to go into our processes? And then based on that, what suppliers will we use to get it? So we'll use the Cropus example first. Let's say we're in new product development. And so we have customers. We have our end customers. We may have shareholders. There's the customer service team who has to interact with the customers, so we want their input. We may have retail customers, whatever that might be. And so then we would start with who are potential customers who might use what we're going to develop. Then we start trying to do some requirements analysis. What are the product specs? What is the budget? What is the timeline that they're expecting? What is their quality expectation? Systems engineering type stuff. Don't tell anybody talking about that. And so then for those requirements, we have to say what outputs do we need to deliver? Well, if I'm a new product development company, then I need a release design. There needs to be a safety review. They probably want some kind of a package with it, a technical literature. If there's any tooling that goes into that as well, that might be part of it. Then we say, here's our design process that we're going to do. We're going to concept, we're going to verify it, validate it, develop a prototype, do a detailed design and test, identify production processes and tooling. And out of that becomes these outputs that will meet these requirements. But then we have to look at it and say, to do these things in our process, what inputs do we need? Well, we need to do the innovation create exercises to come up with ideas. We need to have sketches of concepts, do a SWOT analysis, which we'll talk about in a minute. We may need to do all these things to feed into our design process. And to be able to do that, where are we going to get information to do the create exercises, do the SWOT analysis? Maybe we need to do all of these things. And that becomes the application of Cropus to deliver things straight to the customer. I'm just trying to show an example. Or here's SciPOC, which is just the same things, but looking at it from beginning to end instead of starting with the customer and going backwards. We're looking at supplier first, then input, then process, output customers. So in the previous slide, I used Propus on a fairly high level, complex process, new product development, but yet very little detail, right? Here's an extremely detailed one of a very simple process, making coffee. So you can go as deep as you want on these. So here's my process of making coffee. Add water, add the filter, plug it in, pour all the way. Here's the steps. To be able to make the coffee, I need these inputs.
Depending on the machine.
Hmm?
Depending on the machine.
Depending on the machine, yeah. I kind of am looking at ground coffee. I'm like, oh, the ones that grind the beans are actually making coffee. But here's the different inputs. I might need mugs, water, actual coffee, an outlet to plug the machine into, measuring spoons I need to do the job. And here's the suppliers. This is the suppliers I would need to get all these inputs. Then I make the coffee with the expectation that it's going to have these outputs for these customers. Wife, husband, 2 teenagers. This is how they like their coffee. These are the outputs we need. This is the processes. So kind of about all of those, the value chain analysis, Propus, SciPot, all of them are to make sure that you are considering everything that has to happen to bring your idea into actual being. One of the most commonly used competitive analysis tools is a SWOT analysis. SWOT. So the S and the W in SWOT analysis stand for strengths and weaknesses. So the strengths and weaknesses are our way of assessing our internal capabilities. Those are internal factors, things inside our organization. So they can be either strengths or weaknesses. Our employees. We have a strong employee base. That's a strength of ours because we have experienced, talented people. And we're a really good company, except for our crappy employees. That's a weakness. We need to identify that. Would be great if we just had somebody that was competent. So assessing our financial position, our processes. Hey, we've got proprietary materials, or we've got proprietary processes that are strengths for us. Or we're really good with our engineering capabilities, but really bad at actually making the design in manufacturing, but we're really good at the design. So doing an honest internal reflection of what are our strengths as an organization and what are our weaknesses. And then from the external side, we want to analyze 2 things: opportunities and threats. So that's outside the organization, whether it be competitors, whether it be potential customers, whether it be our supply chain, whether it be the government messing around with stuff. We look at it and say, what about the external environment might create opportunities for us? Or what about the current external environment may be introducing threats that we need to consider? And so then a really good SWOT analysis. So some versions of a SWOT analysis will just have 4 quadrants, and where you list the strengths, you list the weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. This is the way I like to do. Create strengths and weaknesses at the top and list 5 to 10 strengths that you think you have as an organization. 5 to 10 weaknesses. Same thing on the opportunities and threats for the external factors. Here are 5 external opportunities based on what's going on right now that we can identify. But here's 5 threats that are happening based on things that are going on. Then you can start to use that to generate strategies. I've listed my strengths, I've listed my weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. That's descriptive. Okay, you have them. But then what do you do with it? You can start to generate strategies, okay? If I have something that's both a strength that matches up with an opportunity, then those are things we should pursue. Like, those are things I should prioritize and go, hey, there's an opportunity for, we have a really good strength at scalable additive manufacturing of certain metals. That's a niche that we can do that a lot of people can't. And oh, there's an opportunity that they've just passed a law that this needs to be made out of that metal or something. Then okay, that's a strength and it's an opportunity. We can take advantage of that. Or if there's opportunities, but we may not have that capability, or it may not be a strong current capability of ours, but we can identify the opportunity. Well, our strategy there could be, we could really pursue that, but we really need to invest in developing this first to make our weaknesses not as weak so that we can take advantage of that opportunity. We could have a strength. Hey, we're really, really good at this, but then there could be potential threats that could compromise that strength. We're really, really good at making big trucks that get 5 miles a gallon. Now there's threats of regulations and fuel emissions and all of that, that something that might have been a strength creates the threat, says we need to pay attention to this. And how do we redirect our strengths to mitigate the threat? One of the two. And if it's a threat and it's a weakness of ours, my opinion is probably shouldn't be a very high priority. Or you've got to put a lot of time into thinking, how can we hide these weaknesses and avoid the threats? And that's a lot of effort. So it just makes you, again, analyze both from an introspective standpoint, what are our strengths and weaknesses as an organization, be honest about it. But then also looking toward the outside, say, what are some things going on that could be opportunities for us that we can leverage, or what are some things going on that can threaten what we're already really good at or disrupt the market completely? And based on that, are there strategies that we could pursue, should pursue? Strengths we need to really make sure stay strengths, or honestly address the threat. So that's what a good SWOT analysis looks like. That is actually really effective, because like I said, I see a lot that just have the 4 quadrants that are strengths, opportunities, weaknesses, and threats. People will list them, and it's like, oh, hey, congratulations, you've listed them. What are you going to do? It's like some descriptive statistics, mean, standard deviation. Here's what it was. I'm telling you what it was. I'm like, yeah, but give me some kind of analysis that tells me what I can do with it and develop strategies. Then I like this version of SWOT analysis a lot.
You can borrow from risk as well with these, and each of them, and you classify them as accept, avoid, transfer, insurance or whatever, share or exploit.
Yeah.
It's kind of.
Yeah, I think it's a really effective tool. Like I said, I've seen lots of versions of SWOT analysis, and this is my favorite, most useful version of it that I've seen. And another, I think, kind of holistic way to view things is another Michael Porter tool called the 5 Forces model, where he basically says you need to consider more than just your direct competition when you're looking at strategy. So I need to look at, I need to look at my competition, but I also need to look at not just direct competition, but are there threats of substitute products or services? In other words, I offer this, but are there threats that not somebody that's doing what I do, but offer something different that could accomplish the same thing?
And there's a 6th one now.
What's the 6th one?
Complementors.
Complementors?
It's called
Something.
yeah, like a hot dog bun is a complementer to a hot dog.
I like that.
Yeah.
Are there things that could go with it? Supplier power is another one. Now, I want to do this. The idea is good. How easy is it to get stuff from suppliers? How much leverage do they have, or do I have leverage over them? And have that as a consideration. I was talking about in the early COVID days, one of the supply chain issues, there was the production of the vaccine. That was a challenge. Even and then there was the storage of the vaccine because it had to be in subarctic temperatures, at least the ones with the mRNA strand. But it also had to be stored in a certain type of vial made out of a certain type of glass. So now all of a sudden this becomes a way more complicated thing of, oh, we can't just ramp up and make more vaccines. We have to have a place to store it. And can we get the glass to make it? Because there's also a silicone shortage that uses sand and glass, like the same thing that goes into making glass. And like there's all this things to consider. What leverage do the buyers have? And then if there are threats of new entrants. So the article that I shared with you, I thought was a really good application of Porter's 5 forces to the commercial space world. So they're looking at different commercial space companies and kind of comparing, if I was in this, what would it look like? Not just the rivalry amongst existing competitors, but are there threats of new entry? So they analyze it, go, well, it's really expensive to get into this world. It's really risky. There's government regulations. So the assessment there is there's probably not a high threat of a lot of people entering this market right now. In the articles, how they did that. What about suppliers, the power of the suppliers? Well, there's not a lot of suppliers, so they're probably going to be competing for our business. So, I mean, they may have some power, but we also have some leverage on that. Commercial space flight, not a lot of substitutes right now to scratch people's itch of hanging around in cislunar space. Maybe if we advance the slingshot or the catapult, we can get people up there. But otherwise, not a lot of threat of substitute products or services. And then the buyers, what leverage do they have? Not a lot, because there's not a lot of other options, right? Oh, you don't want to pay $250,000 with us to go hang out in space? Go get all the other people that are offering that. Oh, there's not any? Okay. So being able to assess that, I think the Porter's 5 or 6 forces is a useful tool for that as well. Some other strategic considerations. Joint ventures is something that companies look at when they consider strategy. So there's one here in Huntsville. I actually was there today. So I just came from there right before class, was doing some training with some of their leadership. So Toyota and Mazda have a joint venture here in Huntsville. It was announced in 2018. They started production in 2021. So still pretty young company. But the way the joint venture works is you've got two companies that decide to make a third. So it's not Mazda, it's not Toyota. They actually got married as a company, moved to Alabama. Let's pack up our bags, move the kids, get married, and it's a totally different company. Mazda Toyota has its own identity. It's developing its own organizational culture, which is a case study all on its own. But usually these are effective when each partner gets something out of it. Toyota actually approached Mazda and for this joint venture because Toyota, they're the largest automotive manufacturing company in the world. They make over 10 million cars a year. With that growth, makes things kind of a little slow in terms of innovation sometimes. Mazda is a lot smaller, maybe 2 million cars a year. Also has a different philosophy. Like one of their philosophies is design for someone who loves to drive. Not looking to replace driving, but who actually loves the feel of their foot on the accelerator and the feel of the wheels and design for that. But they also just have a lot of, they had some technology innovations specifically in their paint processes that Toyota was really interested in that they wanted to leverage. And they were able to go to Mazda and they say, hey, what you can benefit from us is Mazda hasn't traditionally done a lot in the North American market in terms of manufacturing. They had zero supply chain base in the US, and Toyota has a very strong established. So they were like, you can leverage our supply chain, supply network, leverage your technology. Let's get married and move to Alabama. So they did joint venture. Usually it's most effective when each one gets something out of it. And a lot of times they're not long-term, not permanent things, but sometimes they will. Other strategic considerations, horizontal and vertical integrations. Horizontal integration is when I might expand my company by merging or acquiring competitors, similar companies in similar industries. Oil companies are really big in this. Oil companies merge. Facebook acquiring Instagram, Meta. Competitors now it's like, oh, we're still separate, but the same people own it. American Airlines and US Air a few years ago merged. Airline industries do this pretty frequently. But horizontal integration is a lot of media companies do this fairly often. Time Warner merged several years ago. Disney, ESPN, ABC, all those things. Horizontal integration or vertical integration is going up and down the supply chain and saying, instead of being dependent on external supply chain links, maybe we will invest in some of those on our own. So we talked about Walmart earlier, large retail organization. In my hometown and in many other places, they also decided to manage their own distribution. They have their own distribution warehouses, their own shipping. So they vertically integrated that. Toyota is known to develop and invest in their own suppliers too. They call it, in Japan, they call it the kiriketsu, where you kind of own your, like they may own the foundry that makes the engine blocks and the engine company that supplies the OEM assembly plant. Like they're all us, everything is us, and the dealership, we own that. So from beginning to end, that's what vertical integration is. So there's strategic decisions back and forth. It could be, because on the flip side of that, instead of vertically integrating, it could be we don't want to own our whole supply chain, we'll outsource. It's another strategic decision to make. And it could be outsourcing support functions. So like you're on the radio, a lot of commercials, a lot of times are outsourcing payroll, outsourcing assistance, even to AI these days, and not even to other companies, outsourcing to your AI agent, scheduling, things like that. Or data storage is a big one, renting, investing in that. Or it could be actual larger functions. I know companies that outsource their whole human resource hiring, recruiting function, and just take whoever they get and send it to you. Within manufacturing, a lot of times I work with companies that'll outsource certain things, like they'll send something to a outside company to be plated, or then come right back in and they'll use it for something. So they may outsource a part of what they do. I work with a company in Florida who outsourced a lot of their research and development to a company in India. And that became really fascinating when they still wanted to have a say-so in it. So it's like, we're going to outsource it, then we want to tell you what to do and go out there and stand over you while you do it. And so the key there that I see, like if companies are looking for true, big, long-term overall cost reduction, in my opinion, outsourcing tends to not lead to that. Because what happens very often is you end up outsourcing your competence to someone else. And then once you lose your internal competence, what is the value you have? Maybe for a short term, your brand makes you over. But at some point, you've outsourced everything, and it's key to seek a good fit from a culture standpoint as well. So lots of competitive analysis tools that I just talked about. I also, and this should be hinting at, I want you to spend a lot of time on phase 2 of the project. I also shared some YouTube playlist for you in this module on samples of just showing different SWOT analyses, different things like that. Find tools of your own as well. So the key is to tie. You know you've done a good competitive analysis if you can use the information that you learned from the competitive analysis to populate the right side of your yellow card. So in phase 1 of the project, you were tasked with coming up, using Create tools, coming up with a lot of ideas, choosing 5 that you love, and filling out the innovation engineering yellow card, the left side of it, which is where you identify the customers. You have the innovation name, the news headline, the customers, whose problem does it solve. That's the left side. With the idea being, if you can answer those with some level of confidence, it might be a good idea, move it forward. And if you struggle with, is there a customer, does it solve a problem, then make it start again. Then I think you're choosing 2 at the end of phase 1. So up until now, you've really done this top part of the innovation equation, creating ideas by introducing stimulus, using a lot of tools, leveraging diversity, and starting to communicate to help drive out fear. So part of the communicating process is the left side of the yellow dot. Are we solving the problem? Then we'll get into the commercialized phase today, and both of those will help us drive out fear. So the 3 Ps of communicate, and I touched on this a few weeks ago, is to provide clarity to the ideas that we love. So to provide clarity, we have to answer 3 Ps. What problem does it solve? So we've already started to look at that on the left side of the yellow card. Second one is, for this idea, what is the benefit promise that I can offer? In other words, this answers, for the customer, it answers the question, why should I care? And then the third is, if I can satisfy and convince them they should care, I have to have some kind of proof to back up that what I told them was a benefit promise is actually something I can do. And all of those will help me communicate if my idea is both meaningful and unique, which is what we define as innovation. So the yellow card is a simple way. It looks simple, but there's a lot of information and research that goes behind filling out each of these sections. So we looked at the left side already. And the left side is giving it a good innovation name. Remember, we said a good innovation name has a catchy name that suggests what it is, followed by a descriptor. Survive It, suggestive name. Descriptor, Coldwater Survivals, actually says what it is. Catchy, but also doesn't confuse you about what to expect. The news headline hints at what makes it meaningful or unique. So that should always start with the only or the first, or we can do this X times better than what already exists. The only cold water survival suit that can actually generate heat to prevent hypothermia and save your life. Then articulate who would buy this, who are the customers, and what problem does it solve? So we kind of looked at that before, and now we want to fill out the right side. And information that we can gain from our competitive analysis will help us fill out that right side. So the cold water survival suit. Customers are commercial fishermen. What problem does it solve? Well, the problem is if your body's exposed to extreme cold water, you will die of hypothermia. It's kind of a problem. I agree with you. Existing suits only protect you for minutes, maybe an hour or two. Definitely, often that's not long enough for someone to get to you for help. We have something that can address that problem because ours is the only one to generate heat at hypothermia. Okay, so what is the benefit promise? So this is all great. It's a good thing to say we can solve a problem, but how can we actually convince people that we can? The benefit promise should answer the question to the customer if they ask, why should I care? Why should you care? The Survive It suit is a cold water survival suit that keeps you alive 9 times longer. Okay, I care about that. Than any suit in the world. As long as you are breathing, your body will stay at normal body temperature. Benefit promise. Okay, that sounds great, but why the heck, proof, should I believe it? That sounds kind of crazy. So this is where you fill in with the technical back. That's because we have a patented suit using your own air to generate heat rather than conserving it as most suits do. Every time you exhale, you produce more heat for the suit. An independent test. We immersed people in 45-degree water for 24 hours, and not only was the core body temperature held, it was actually warm. And there's some numbers that we'll run. I'll talk about that in a minute. And then identifying death threats. So the right side involves all of those things. And there's work to be done. Those are not just fields to fill in. There's work to be done to gain information in each of those. So I want to explain a little bit what each of these things are. What is a benefit promise? A benefit promise answers the question to the customer, why should you care? And being able to articulate benefit promises increases our chance of selling an idea by 120%. So what does that mean? It means as engineers, as designers, very often we like to try to talk to people about the features, the technologies, the facts, the egghead stuff, the gearhead stuff that only we understand to the depth that we understand it because we dove into it. We like to sell technical features and specifications. Where we need to be selling benefit promises, which tells the customer what they get out of it, what is going to save them, what is it going to get for them. In other words, when in doubt, just always ask, how can I convince the customer that they should care? So selling someone with features would be doing something like this. Hey, this has a 2.8 liter turbo diesel with 186 horsepower, 369 foot-pound torque. A lot of specs and features. Okay, but why should I care? It's 20% better fuel mileage, 40% higher towing capacity. Oh, that's what it does. This stuff to the average customer may mean nothing. It's just numbers. What does it get me? Oh, why do I care about a 2.8 liter turbo diesel? That doesn't sound big. My buddy's got a 3.7 or a 5.7, whatever. And oh, because it gets 20% fuel mileage and 40% higher towing capacity. Okay, those are things I care about. Now, feature. Hey, our product, we're going to sell it to you. It contains 7.5% benzocaine. Come on, man. That's why you should care. It's got 7.5% benzocaine. That's why you should care. I'm chemical engineer. I came up with this stuff. Obviously, duh. You should care because it's got 7.5% benzocaine. Means nothing to me. Why should I care? Fast pain relief for teeth. Guts this little person. Got it. That's why I should care. Makes that little smirk go away. Feature. A blend of 3 waxes. Okay, that's great. Is that good? Is it bad? There's other people do 5. 1, does 3 waxes make it better or worse? Don't try to sell features. What is the benefit? What do I get out of this? The shine will last twice as long. Okay, that's what I get. Benefit promise. So being able to articulate benefit promises is very important. And I'll beat you up if you don't, like in your project. But then you also have to back it up. You can't just say our idea is going to do this. You better be able to back it up. And that's where the features, that's where the specs come into play. You don't lead with it. But when you convince them that they compare with the benefit promise, but then when they say, why should I believe you? That's when you can follow up with the proof. So there's a lot of ways to exhibit proof. The absolute best way is with real numbers.
You got a lot of slides tonight.
Doing my best. I'm moving through pretty well, right? So with proof, a lot of real numbers is the best way to offer proof. Hey, we measured this. This is 52% or 50% more force. Another way to offer proof, this is a little less effective, but still effective, is my presenting simple logic. Customer problem. They want more fruit flavor. Okay, what can we offer? Our muffins have more blueberry flavor than anybody's. That's the benefit promise. Okay, great. Why should I believe you? Because we put twice as many in. Duh. Logic. Test results, marketing results. This is where you pull stuff from your competitive analysis. In an independent blind, frequent in a blind test. So these are headphones. So good thing it wasn't a deaf test. Independent blind test. Business travelers rated our product #1 twice as often as the competitors. That's a good thing to put in as proof. Expert testimonials. This was an example of doctors who used a doctor for their services. I'm an eye doctor and I use this eye doctor to do my laser vision correction. Expert testimony, that's a good thing to cite in the proof section. Demonstrations. Any way that you can do demonstrations is a way to offer proof. Our pool cover. That one must be pretty strong. This one. So I've trained Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for a long, long time. And in the early days of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, so Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is based off of, I'm going to really do my best not to geek out in history. There's a guy named Jigoro Kano in Japan who invented Judo. His version of Jiu-Jitsu, which means gentle technique. He developed Judo, which means gentle way, because he wanted to have a deeper philosophical meaning. But one of his top students was also a politician and helped settle a Japanese colony in Brazil. And there was a family that was a prominent political family in Brazil named the Gracie family. And in exchange for helping establish this colony in Brazil, Jigoro Kano's student, Mitsuyo Maeda, I will not ask you that on the exam, although maybe I should, agreed to teach Gastel Gracie's sons Judo, Kano Jiu-Jitsu, Judo. And so in Brazil, it became known as Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So in the day, nobody knew what Jiu-Jitsu was. And in Brazil, there were a lot of what they call luta libre, Muay Thai, striking was very prominent. So what they would do in karate was really big at the time. And so what the Gracie Academy would do was run papers in the newspaper, run ads in the newspaper that said, please come on down. We have an open challenge. Call it the Gracie Challenge. Walk in, fight us. If we win, you get 3 weeks of training. If you win, teach us, show us that you're better. No pure form of demonstration. We will prove our method is better. Come fight us. So that's the story behind it. That's proof, right? Like we can benefit promise. We will teach you how to choke people out twice as fast. Proof, come try it. Guarantees. It's another way to offer some semblance of proof. If you get a degree from us, we have an employment guarantee or whatever it may be. There's always some fine print. Be aware of it, but that's another way of offering proof. So, but the key is all of that just doesn't come from making it up. It comes from doing your good competitive analysis. And the more you find out, the more it will help you craft this information for your idea. Tell the customer why they should care. Back it up with the proof. Don't lead with the technical specs. Lead with the benefit. Back it up with the specs as the proof. So all of that in phase one, come up with ideas using the create tools. Then at the end of phase one, I said, choose ideas that you love and move them into the next phase. And at the end of phase one, you actually did. You moved 5 and you said, who would be the customers for these products? Hope you have. What problem does it solve? You did those 2. That's the left side. And then you kind of choose some and move on. But then you also have to fill out the promise and the proof for the other 2. Now we're going to use our competitive analysis and go even further. And that'll either tell us more and convince us we have a good idea, or say, you know what, we can't really back up this benefit promise with proof, or we can't even craft a good benefit promise to convince a customer why they should care. Let's back it up with some reasonable proof. We need to kill these ideas, but move forward. Then we're going to do a deeper dive, see if we can actually run some numbers, do some prototypes, make it real, or in other words, jump to the commercialization phase to see if we can do a little more to drive out more fear. And so there's 3 things in the commercialized phase in innovation engineering that we can do to try to learn more about our idea to give us confidence that it'll work, or give us confidence that it won't, and kill it off. Simultaneous engineering, focus on death threats, and fail fast, fail cheap experiments. So simultaneous engineering. The yellow card, again, looks very simple. There's a lot of work that goes behind each section that I'm going to expect to see. And it's not linear. In other words, the more you find out in one section, you probably need to go back and polish the other sections. In other words, you may start with a customer problem that you've identified. Oh, we filled out the left side and we said, here's the customers of our idea and here's what problem to solve. But as we start trying to determine the benefit promise and the proof, and we start running some numbers, what I'm learning from the benefit promise tells me, or from the proof, is that I have to reword my benefit promise based on what I can actually prove, which makes me reframe the problem that I'm actually solving. And then when I run the numbers, I'm like, oh, actually, we can't do this, but we can do this. You should be going back and forth across all of those different sections. Step 2 is this idea of focusing on any killer death threats. So a killer death threat is one of 3 things. It's a threat that's out there that says the customer really won't care about this. So in other words, if nobody's willing to buy it, that's a bad idea. Or even if the customer cares about it, if it's something that we can't convince ourselves would actually work. Oh, that's a great idea, but that's never going to happen. Or customers will care, it would work, but there's no way to make it profit. So if you're looking at your ideas and you have those questions, those are three things that could absolutely kill the idea. That doesn't mean it's the end of the world. Your job is not to completely vanquish the killer death threat, but what you need to do is experiment, investigate to see if you can turn it into a manageable threat that is livable. And so the way we do that is through what innovation engineering calls fail fast, fail cheap experiments. Or in the lean world, we called it plan, do, check, act at a rapid pace. Have an idea, go do, check it, see what we learned, adjust, and constantly experiment. As the alleged quote from Thomas Edison said, I've not failed 1,000 times, but I have found 1,000 ways not to make a light bulb. And that's the atmosphere of experimentation. Come up with an idea, test it, adjust, see if it got better, test it again as quickly as possible. So ways that we can do fail fast, fail cheap approaches to learn more. Do searching, digging, see if we can find out more about questions that we have. Run numbers. I'm going to show some of that here in a minute. Mock-up prototypes, really cheap on the 3D printing. That's an easier thing to do now more than ever is mock up a prototype. This is actually an example of a machine I was working on with a company in Florida, and we were actually trying to hook up. This is a fitting, and this was a machine that made a little check valve, and it would make it and spit it out of a bucket, and then they would throw it into a tester and it would test it. And we were trying to hook it up to where it would drop into this. We were hooking up a vacuum tube to this fitting, and the vacuum tube was going to go into the next machine instead of going into a bucket and dumping the whole bucket if we were going to have it go straight in there. But it was an automated machine. We were trying to find a way to get it into the tube. And one of the engineers kept conceptualizing, well, if we had a funnel that looked like this, or looked like that, I think it would work, but I just don't know. And he spent 2 days saying that. And finally, that was a manufacturing engineer. Finally, one of their quality engineers just got tired of it. And during one of the breaks, she had an empty water bottle, and she stuck a pin in it, punctured it, and then ripped the top off of it, turned it upside down, and went out there and made a funnel to test it really fast. She's like, I'm tired of this 2 days of all these talking and design and trying to get it right. Let's just go see if this will work or not. It costs nothing. And we played around with it and got it to working in a couple hours. Then, is that what's out there right now? No. But it was quick enough to prove if it worked or not. So here's just an example of fail fast, fail cheap. Our buddy Bill, maybe a home brewer. Sounds like an interesting dude. And he thinks that he's developed a beer that prevents hangovers. Okay.
Beers,
Yeah.
wow.
That would be a scam. So you got my attention, Bill. He is using a proprietary mix of herbs to make that work. Okay. So he can probably convince some people why they should care. Beer with no hangover. You got my attention. Can you prove it? That could be a killer death threat if he can't. So he's identified, or his investors have identified, hey, Bill, you might be onto something, but we really need you to address these two things. These herbs, is it legal? What are you selling? Is this legal? And then 2, does it really prevent hangovers? So if neither of those, if you can address those, we can invest. So what are some things we can do? For one killer death threat, is it legal to sell? Maybe we could go and ask some experts and dig into that to see about the legality of it. Does it really work? Maybe we can do an experiment. Maybe we'll take our buddies that get hangovers all the time and take a bunch of them and see if this actually can prove that. Just things that we can go and do. And then also running some numbers. So you may be familiar with Fermi estimation. Our buddy Enrique Fermi, physicist that was involved in the Manhattan Project, I believe is Italian. And he was known for being able to estimate calculations really quickly. And his philosophy was, if you can get within a factor of 10, an order of magnitude, and you've estimated enough variables, then your overestimation and underestimation will probably get it pretty close to it. Or close enough to at least help you make some quick informed decisions at a high level. So in other words, by a factor of 10 would be, can I choose the right answer very quickly here? How far is Huntsville, Alabama from Chicago, Illinois? Is it 100 miles, 1,000 miles, or 10,000 miles? If you had to pick one, which would you pick?
1,000.
It's not 100. 100 miles is not very far. It's not 10,000 miles. That's 3 times the US. So 1,000 may not be exactly 1,000, but that's the closest within a magnitude of 10. How tall is this building? Is it a foot? Is it 10 foot? Is it 100 foot? 1,000 foot? 10,000 feet?
10,000.
A 10,000 foot tall building. So here's an example of just quickly, if I can guess, New York to Los Angeles in general, and it's not going to be exact, is roughly 3,000 miles. And I know that there's 3 time zones between those. That tells me that there's about 1,000 miles per time zone. There's 24 hours in a day, there's 24 time zones. So if I can guess, I bet the Earth, I bet the equator is 24,000 miles long. Just using simple guesstimation and the exact numbers, actually pretty close. So that's what it is, just using order of magnitude estimations. But then you also have to, I just find this fun, math today. So there's a math problem where apparently they were testing the students' ability to estimate. So you're supposed to estimate 2 numbers in the written problem and come up with the answer. So if I had to estimate, read 28 pages, I'll change that to 30 for quick math. And another 103, I'll change that to 100. So the answer is supposed to be 70, the difference. And this kid did the exact equation. So the answer is supposed to be 70 by estimation instead of the exact answer. So be careful with estimates, but for at a high level, I think it's okay. So how you can use it to do some fairly quick estimations to assess the viability of your product is this formula for sales forecasting for maybe the first year of annual sales. And so I'll give you the cheat code here. So FDM is final decision makers. How many final decision makers are there for my product? If I have a product that I think every human being could be a potential customer for, maybe 8 billion would be that. I don't know any product where, or if it's just commercial fishermen, guess what? I'm going to have to do some research to see how many commercial fishermen there are. Then, of the final decision makers, I need to determine a guesstimate of how many would actually trial it. And the trial rate is the percent who are aware of my idea in the first year. And that's people who actually know that it exists. And then of those that are aware, how many are actually willing to try it? Because there's plenty of people that are going to say, oh, I know it exists, but I'm not going to try it. I'll let somebody else try it. And if they're willing, are they actually able? Do they have access to it? Can they get it? Or have they just heard of it? So you multiply those 3 things together, and that's your trial rate. And what are you going to sell the first purchase for? So that gives you your first component of annual sales. What is the total number of people that could potentially, what is my audience, multiplied by the trial rate of my total audience, what percentage are aware, willing, and able to try it in the first year, multiplied by the first purchase revenue, And that will give me the first component of annual sales. And then the second component is if it's something that I have that someone might buy more than once. I mean, if it's a yacht, maybe they only buy one a year.
It's 1 a year.
Right. Someone I don't know. If it's a magical pencil eraser, maybe people buy 100. I might buy more than one. I don't know. That's up to your product. But if there is, no one would buy more than one a year, then your estimate stops here. If there is a repeat purchase, either a full repeat of a second one, or if there's like replaceable cartridges or something that's part of it, then there could be a repeat purchase, which is the final decision makers times the trial rate times the percentage of those that repeat buy in the first year times what the repeat purchase revenue per item is. In other words, if it's a full second one, then it may be the same as the first purchase. Or if it's you buy this and then for 25% of the cost over the year, you might need 3 replacement cartridges or something, then you would only count that. And that'll give you an estimate of the first year annual sale. So it could be first for the cold water survival suit that we were following. Final decision makers, remember the customers were commercial fishermen. So maybe I go and I do some search and say, hey, how many commercial fishermen are there in the world? Or if I'm only going to look in the US, how many commercial fishermen are there in the US? Find who your audience is going to be. And by the way, when you're giving me these numbers, I'm going to want sources to back it up. But we did this and this is where we came up with this number.
Can we assume that we've got a patent?
I would throw the patent in the death threat potential if not having one could be a problem. So no, I will say you don't assume it.
Okay.
Part of your idea search hopefully is that there's not something existing that has a patent on it already. That's part of the create something unique. But no assumption for now, just there's this many people out there in the cold water survival suit. There might be 100,000 commercial fishermen. Okay. But of those 100,000, maybe only 25,000 are aware that it exists. And again, this is just an estimation. So that brings it down to 25,000. And of those 25,000, maybe only 75% of those that are aware are actually willing to try. And of those, only half of those are actually able to assess it. So maybe only 9%, so 50%, 75 times 25, of the 100,000 potential customers, our trial rate might be 9% or 9,000, might be a potential audience in the first year, and we're going to sell these at $3,500 a piece. Whereas 1% might buy a second one at $3,500, and running those numbers will give me an estimate of first year sales. And then that's just a piece of information. I'm not saying that you need to pick the one that has the most first year sales. That doesn't mean necessarily that it's success. We certainly don't want to have an idea that's losing money. But this is just a way to do some estimated math to give you more information about your product. And then, like I said, identify any potential death threats and what you need to do to address it. So for the cold water survival suit, one of the death threats, does this technology actually last long enough to save lives? You say it lasts 9 times longer than existing suits, but what if 9 times longer is still not longer to save someone's life? Well, this kept me alive for 1 minute. This one keeps me alive for 9, but it takes 2 hours for somewhere to get to them. Then is it worth the extra $3,500? Well, we need to investigate typical times for instance. Can we produce it at a price that makes sense for customers? So we have to perform. What are you willing to pay for the extra value that we're offering? So all of that should be able to help you take phase 1, coming up with ideas, choosing 5, filling out the left side of the yellow card, choosing to move forward. Then you're gonna do your competitive analysis, your Fermi estimation, or any kind of financial estimation you can come up with if you can justify it. That'll tell you, hey, one of them we want to move forward, and the other one we're not. And then in phase 3, little sneak peek, you will come up with a high-level strategic plan of what would need to bring that into being. And we'll talk about that in the next 2 weeks, I guess, on recorded lectures, if I'm not in. Which I hate because those are really fun classes to teach. So I know I covered a lot tonight. I wanted to get that in. You should have everything to finish phase 2 now of your project. There's a lot of heavy lifting in phase 2. So about the project, and again, for those of you that are here, are probably watching live, you're not the ones I'm saying this to, so I apologize. And there's a chance maybe the ones I'm saying this to may not even watch this video, and that's fine. But more so this year than normal, I've had multiple teams, the realization that people haven't engaged with the team, or in some cases not joined a team. And considering that phase 1 was supposed to be due last night, I added 2 more days to it. I'm a nice guy most of the time. Not for this reason, but for other reasons. That's concerning, because a third of the project's done, and I, on the syllabus stated, this project is 40% of your overall program. So it needs consistent engagement throughout the semester. Because I don't give homework. This is just like a huge, like this, it's kind of the capstone of the EM Master's program, and like tying a lot of stuff together, and like this project's kind of a big deal to me. And so it's not one of those projects where you just show up once and throw everything together. And I know a lot of you have glanced and have done some really, really good work. So again, most of you, I'm not saying this for, but I am saying that if you have teammates that have not been engaged, I can tell activity levels on Canvas and in Miro. Like it's not like I'm a goofball. I act like it sometimes. Or if you just are joining a team or you haven't engaged, that probably wasn't a great idea for you in this class. So I just wanted to mention, because I know I mentioned it in the syllabus, talked about it in class. There was even like an actual assignment, participation badge assignment to join teams, get acquainted, get on Miro, have fun. This is a fun assignment if you let it. I can't make have fun. I didn't make you come to graduate school either. So like if you don't want to do the assignment, you can't make it. I always say nothing in any of my classes is required. Absolutely nothing is required, including passing. I will grade everything. You have to do nothing in any of my classes. I will grade everything, so it's not required to pass. I will take you as seriously as you take my class. And if somebody has a problem with that, we have a Canvas page. I have office hour link. All my information is on there, and I'm not hard to find. I don't think that's unreasonable to request, because it's disrespectful to the other people in the class who have put in a lot of good effort on this project and are taking it seriously. And so like, take me seriously or not, that's one thing. Disrespecting the rest of the students, I'm not okay with. So I hope that's understandable. I wanted to get that captured on recording. I didn't want to steal that at the beginning, so we were home going through it. But good night, everybody. go with that.